before I begin talking about the work. Because how does a painter turn out to create work like this? I studied painting and drawing for my BFA and MFA, but when I was in about the last semester of grad school, I decided that the surfaces I was using were too boring, that the surfaces needed something. They needed an object, they needed texture. So I built up texture on my work with using putty and canvas and other materials. So that was the precursor of wanting to use the found object. When I got out of grad school, I would search the streets. You know, my eyes are always down even still, looking for the unusual, the cast off, the piece of metal that got thrown away that the car has driven over many times. It has a real patina about it. In fact, I found a piece in Louis, it seems unrelated, but I found a wonderful iron piece in Louis' parking lot once, and I love the painting even still, it's part of the painting. But I was able to correlate the found objects with the paint, and building up the surface, it all became one, and they seemed to live together very comfortably. So I was on my way then. About 15 years ago, I started using a box. And I used just a plain box. I would build a box and find some sort of humble object, like I said earlier, a cast off. Nothing that had an identity, but I would elevate it, give it new life, give it recognition, and save it, I would say, save it from the garbage heap or the dumpster. And I made these shrines or reliquaries. That's what I felt they were. Jumping forward now quickly, I'm now using the box format, but I've jumped out of the box and gotten into sculpture, which I really prefer. It gives you great freedom. And the objects nowadays are not just what you find in the street. Unfortunately, they are pricey, and I have to search far and wide to get the objects. But that's part of the challenge in making this work. I have been more excited about this work, this body of work, than I have really about any other work I've done up till now. I start either with an idea, a concept, something I want to, like I'll start with musical chairs, because it was the very first piece I did in this series. That's why the name Musical Chairs. So I said, I want to do a piece called Musical Chairs. So then I had to, start my search, and it took me quite a long time to get the materials for it. The box had to be built so that each object would have its own place of recognition, and so that was the first piece. Now, I started with musical chairs, started with chairs and dolls, and I ended up with chairs and dolls. And I had no intention of doing so, because my work starts off either as a preconceived idea, as I said, with musical chairs, and then I search for objects to reinforce the theme. Or I will just find things that have character, and I'll say, oh, this piece has possibility. I know I can use it along sometimes later. So I'll collect all this stuff. And my studio is not one that's organized, and I just have objects all over, so they're easy to grab. So I'll just grab objects, and the objects start relating to one another. And pretty soon I have a piece of sculpture or a box. And the theme just manifests itself. So I am a very intuitive person. As a painter, I was an intuitive painter. I would start painting, and the image would just, manifest itself after the process. But as I said, most of these are the boxes at the beginning of the series. Then I got into the relief down here, the water clock. which was a bit different. I sort of jumped back into my painting. And I do miss painting, and I am using painting. I painted the pieces, the waiting room and the no grazing piece. They have to be painted. And it was fun again to layer the painting, putting the layers down, building up the surfaces, and looking at the underpainting, and it's very intriguing. Painting's just intriguing. So this was sort of out of place, and I'm back with the box here. This piece, a monstrance, was just, I found this piece, and it was an old watch holder. A person would take their pocket watch off and hang it. And this is a lamp base, and I embellished I made it look like a monstrance. So my Catholic background comes out in my work. In fact, many years ago, someone said, "Oh, you must be a Catholic." I see thorns in your work. Well, you can't get away from how you were raised. It's risky. But a lot of the pieces are whimsical. And old Clark here, or Rhett as you want to call him, the inception for Rhett on the chair came from my granddaughter. She was in my studio. I have 2 granddaughters, and they love to come in the studio. And, it's like I'm holding my breath, like, don't get too close to that. But I want them to interact, and I want them to be comfortable there. So one of them found this man and put him on a chair. And I said, that's really a neat idea. I think I'm going to put him in a sculpture. So he ended up in that box. And it is so difficult to find male busts. Women are easy to find, like Elizabeth over here, she was easy to find. But it's very hard to find a male image to use. So, boy, I saw Red and I just grabbed him. And I said, he's going to go on a chair. So it is, a humorous piece. And my work was more humorous than the last show. And my last show was boxes like this, or sculptures. But I talk about things. My reason for making art either is I want to relate everyday experiences, things I see, our pop culture, current events, as we see with no grazing. This is unusual. The Elizabeth piece, I don't keep up with British royalty. I just don't. I have other things on my mind. But I did her in 2009 or 2010. And then this year is her Diamond Jubilee. I said, that's really weird. I must have had a premonition that her Diamond Jubilee was coming up. I got very interested in these Rendell dolls. They were made in the 50s. I used no objects that are younger than the 50s. So everything is vintage or antique. I use them because their faces are so staid, and so they just look, like zombies in a way. They have a fixed stare that I find compelling because there's a timelessness about them. Like the waiting room, it could be many things. I like my work to have a multiplicity of meanings to the audience. I hope the audience gets a multiplicity of meanings from my work. I have enjoyed doing this. As I said, it was the most fun, and I just can't get away from the found object. I think I'm hooked. If anyone has any questions.
For all of the found objects, do you ever model make to fit the need?
I have had to, but all of these are ready-mades. And I'm drawn to all the artists who have made a construction, Marcel Duchamp, who used the ready-mades, Joseph Cornell, who did boxes.
I'm really curious of what your studio looks like.
Oh, it's a wreck.
I mean,
it's a wreck.
I'm not a very orderly person, so I can't imagine having all these parts and pieces. You have some kind of order that you keep all the hands together, and all the arms together, and all this.
My friend Marcia came over one day and she helped me, really, it was a labor of love. She categorized little found objects, big found objects, medium-sized found objects, but if they're put in a drawer somewhere, they have to be in sight, in front, yeah.
Who does the carpentry work?
The carpentry work, some of it I do, some of it other people do, but thanks for asking that. Yeah, I used to do all of it.
I like it.
Yes, Randall?
Yes, would you tell us some intriguing, interesting ways some of the objects were found?
Through search, diligent search. I don't just walk down the street and find them anymore. I have to go out and purchase these.
Flea markets?
Yes, well, flea markets or antique shops. I have other sources. I have a secret source I'll not divulge.
Were you into shadow boxes as a child? That one in particular reminds me of shadow boxes like my mom
Yeah,
had.
no, I didn't do shadow boxes as a child. My statement says as a little girl I would steal away with my mother's sewing basket because in that sewing basket she had all kinds of pieces of straw, millinery supplies, cloth, and I would make things with it. So I've always liked little things and collecting things because I always can see the value in something. You know, this can be used for something, or usually it can be used for what it's not supposed to be used for. That's
Linda, there's always such a preciousness about your pieces, and I'd like for you to speak a little bit to that, perhaps.
okay. Well, I do elevate the mundane to a higher state. So people will make note of that humble object that has validity. But thank you.
Does
for
that
seeing
process ever reverse itself in your work?
In which way?
In having something of great value or that kind of thing that is then demoted, so to speak?
Yeah. I can't recall that I've done that yet,
Okay.
but you've given me an idea.
Your use of color and paint in the water clock is absolutely beautiful. Do you think you'll further explore combining your use of paint and found objects in more work?
That's a possibility, since that's almost a more recent piece, and like I said, it's that piece, no grazing, and waiting for the last three pieces. Yeah, I'm beginning to feel that need to get that paint brush back into the paint. I don't know what form it's going to take. I just start working, and whatever comes, comes. It's that artistic process. It kind of just propels me along. And you had a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what inspired you to do that piece over there about the water?
The water plot?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was intrigued by these little mermaids that I saw. And I said, well, you know, okay, they swim in water. And then I had some clock pieces. And I said, okay, I want to do a round piece. I want it to be water. And I want to have the mermaids going around and make it like a clock. So it sort of fell together easily.
Did you have extra mermaids?
Would you like some? I'll tell you.
No, I was just wondering. I was just wondering if you were limited, like you had 6.
No, I could have put more,
Mhm.
but I felt that the balance of the
Mhm.
piece would have not been, well, wouldn't work.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much for listening, putting up with me.